Q&A. Brian, I'll make you co-host really quick. Should be ready to go. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Bianca. I'm gonna go ahead and open it up to everyone. If that sounds good. Awesome. All right, you will see the flood coming in shortly. All right, thank you again for leading tonight. It's always such a good session. Okay, here they come.
And here they come. All the smiling faces. Hey, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to the Military Veterans Writing Program brought to you by the Writers Guild Foundation. This is the 7th week of the basic course, and we are happy you're still with us. Tonight is going to be very interesting. You will have heard your mentors say from time to time, writing is rewriting. Well, tonight's topic is going to be rewriting, and it'll be brought to you by a wonderful writer and a wonderful speaker, Bianca Sams. But before we get there, we need to give a big round of applause for our leader and hear from her. A big round for Kira Vandenbrand.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah.
Great to see you all. Just a couple of quick reminders. Again, applications for the Writers Access Support Step Training Program are open till September 16th. I'll keep reminding you in case anyone is interested in applying. Information's on our website. And also just wanted to make a note that we are now in the second to last meeting of the basic course. Next week, we're going to be covering industry etiquette and the business of writing with the great panel. And after that, we're going to shift to meeting every other week, with the second Tuesday of each month being our required meeting with the panel as usual. And then the fourth Tuesday of the month will be an encouraged but optional session where it's basically you'll have extra time to meet with your mentors. So instead of doing our panels, you'll have a 3-hour uninterrupted opportunity to be in a breakout session with your mentors. I'll get into details of that and like what everything will look like probably after our next session. But just note our weekly sessions, this will be the second to last, and then after that we're meeting every other week. That's about it from my end. Tim, if you wanted to take it over.
Yeah, it's time to play. What have you seen? 1 hour, half hour movies, old, new, good, bad, or indifferent. What have you seen? And give us your reaction.
Uh, a, a week ago, I saw The Brutalist,
The
and
what? I'm sorry, the what?
the Brutalist.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. And I was just completely taken by it. It's such a gorgeously filmed movie, so beautiful, and it's 4 hour long, but it didn't feel like 4 hours.
So the writing worked for you, huh?
It was mostly the cinematography. The writing is great, but the cinematography really um is gorgeous.
Mm.
It's shot with a VistaVision camera that hasn't been used in over 60 years. And it was just completely different than anything else I've seen.
Interesting. All right. Who's next? Who saw something they want to tell us about, film or TV?
I saw Weapons.
What's it about?
It's a horror film. It's by Zach Kreger. He did Barbarian. And it made me want to stop writing because I'll never write that well. It was so good.
Oh, use it just the opposite. Use it as an inspiration.
Exactly, yeah. The
Something to
structure of
follow.
it, yeah. The structure was very clever, and the mythology behind his story was very, very simple. So he was able to not have to explain too much, and also like parse out the information, so it became increasingly more scary. I just can't say enough good about it. It was amazing.
Cool. Who's next? Oh, come on.
I got one. I watched Blade Runner again recently, and I think this time I caught the that the story arc kind of flips, and it's a kind of about the Rutger Hauer character by kind of about like Act Two. And I think I didn't quite realize it the first time I watched it, but that last scene, the tears in the rain scene, I was always thought it was kind of contrived that like, why does he save Deckard? Why does he save Deckard? But like the fact that he saves Deckard from falling is because he doesn't want to die alone. He wants to be remembered. He wants his memories that he is holding on to be remembered. And I don't know. It was great. So anyway, recommend.
Great. Hey, everybody, thank you for playing along with What Have You Seen? And we're going to do this every week. And the only reason we do it is to remind you, you got to watch film and TV. And you have to read scripts, but watching film and TV is also critical to the mix because that's what we do. We write to be performed. So bear that in mind. All right. It is with great pleasure that I want to introduce to you a very talented writer who works in film, television, and theater. She's currently writing a play on commission, and in February was honored at the Denver Playwright Festival that takes place annually. So everybody, a big hand for Bianca Sams. We can't hear you.
Thank you. Sorry. You know how Zoom is, where you're like, they moved things and you're suddenly like, where the hell is the unmute button? And I have to share my screen. So I was also in the process of trying to share when I was also unmuting. So just know there's always those times where you just have those moments. So just give me a second so that I can get this all set up and let me know when this is centered for you guys. Can everybody see this? Is that a yes? Okay.
Yeah,
It's
I
good.
can figure out how to minimize this Zoom because it's going to drive me nuts. Hold on 1 second. Now the Zoom screen's in the middle of what I have to say. So I have notes, guys. I have notes. Okay. Now I am ready. So we can start editing here. Hello, everyone. This is Anatomy of Rewriting, a discussion of the rewriting process. But let me start by saying there is no one way to do this. There's no golden ticket, no shortcuts, no easy way out. And although I can't bequeath you the perfect rewriting process, because of course you will find your own, I will endeavor to discuss best practices, methodology, metastructure, rubrics, tools, and mantras and tips that I have picked up along the way. But first, I guess I should tell you who the hell I am. Hello, my name's Bianca. I have lived many lives. I started out as an actor, then I became a playwright. I've taught the fundamentals of playwriting and other forms of writing on the college level, while also writing my dark and twisty plays and even a novel. Then my whole world changed when I came to LA to take part in the Warner Brothers TV writing program. RIP to that program, it is now gone. But that is how I got here. And that is what kick-started this current part of my professional career as a writer. And between these three mediums, I have crafted well over 100 pieces of writing, including 4 features, 6 full-length plays, at least 12 original pilots, countless pitches for film and TV. I've also written on 7 TV shows, including the originals, How They Made Her, Titans, and Sweet Magnolias. All of that is to say, I have done a lot of rewriting using this approach with great success. So I know it works for me, and hopefully some of this will be helpful for you. Okay, but first, a few provisos, a couple of crows. I've worked in different mediums, so occasionally some of the language I use isn't typical film and TV jargon. But don't be afraid, don't get all hung up. If my language is different than yours, I will try to explain how I'm defining terms, so that way you guys can determine how my definition of things kind of lines up with your own. Lastly, I talk a little fast. Sometimes I think a little fast, but this is going to be recorded. So if you miss anything, you're going to get a link. You could just rewatch it again later. Okay, so now that I've got all of that out of the way, let's get into the meat of things, shall we? As Tim said, you've heard it a million times. Writing is rewriting, and rewriting, and rewriting, and rewriting, and rewriting. So the purpose of tonight is to show you how to craft a bulletproof rewrite strategy that is efficient and effective. And I will share some things that I think are essential for the rewriting process to be successful. So you can bypass the countless rabbit holes, snares, obstacles that rear their head along the way. So I guess we should start by defining what is and isn't a rewrite by, again, my definition of what it is. Let's start with what I don't think a rewrite is. A rewrite is not ripping your script apart willy-nilly, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Bad idea. It's also not making minor changes or tweaks to the script to turn it in, because that's called a polish, what happens at the very, very end of the process. It's also not throwing shit against the wall and hoping it sticks, aka adding random scenes or inserting some razzle-dazzle action sequence, hoping that no one notices that big-ass plot hole in the middle of Act 2. And it's definitely not also blindly taking every note that you're given or playing musical chairs with words, hoping that some witty catchphrase will offset the lack of genuine character development. So don't become a human thesaurus. Yeah, no. Sorry, not sorry. None of these things are rewriting. They're just the fastest ways to land yourself on the hamster wheel of death. And worse, your script won't get any better, and you'll end up ripping your hair out, which, of course, none of us want. So, what is a rewrite? If you actually want to produce a solid rewrite, then you should take this holistic approach to the process. Examine your work with clear eyes and an open heart, because the goal here is to make sure that your script becomes its highest self, which requires you to be strategic, focused. There must be method to your madness, or else it's just madness, which requires a systematic way of analyzing what's in your draft so that you can make a wise battle plan. Rewrites are also done in steps, aka you cannot do all of this at once. Y'all are military, so hopefully this is not a new concept to you. But in case it might be, let me get into it a little bit deeper. What I call the roadmap success. To create a roadmap, you must be able to correctly identify your problems, A. You have to understand how they happened and also why those issues are present in the script. And you really need to ask yourself a probing question. Then, and only then, can you start to craft a solid battle plan. First of all, it requires critical reading skills. I say for me, when I'm reading something new, like the play that I'm working on that's due soon, I will read the script from a third person's point of view. Look, I know we all tend to get attached to our work because, well, we wrote it, right? However, it's better to be a writer if you read it from a distance, right? That very first time. For me, that looks like pretending it's someone else's work entirely. Someone I like a lot, and perhaps even an audience member. I try to see the script through their eyes, and I ask myself what questions they might have or consider what might take them out of my script. But I'll get into that a little bit more later. After I've done that initial read, I will get a second opinion, aka notes from somebody else. This is someone I trust and know very well, who also knows my work, which I think is important. But make sure that the person is actually willing and able to give you thoughtful notes and a timely manner, because a lot of people get really busy, or maybe they're not the right person. But literally, do not just give your script to any warm body. That is a bad idea. That is the quickest way of getting bad notes. I think it's important to think about the people you vibe with. Maybe it's somebody in your writers group or in a writing class. You can even look to your mentors, but sometimes I think those can be your secondary reads. But whoever you have that you trust. It could also be a friend who studied English, a director, an actor friend. All of these people will get could really work. But when you do give the script to another person, you have to be specific about what you're trying to address in this rewrite. That way, the person who's giving you notes can be very helpful to you. Know what kind of rewrite you're doing. And this will make a little bit more sense later, but how do I say? Because there's different passes, right? You could be doing a plot pass or a story pass or a character pass or a tone pass or rules of the world pass, particularly if you're doing genre work. So you want real feedback from this reader, not just a simple, I liked it, I didn't like it, which is so not helpful. You want them to be able to actually address your notes. Address your issues. So that's a big thing. Also, because there are different types of passes, like I just said, that you can do in your script, it's best not to try to wear all the hats when you're rewriting at once or fix everything at once. The next thing to remember when you're doing this is there's no room in this process for nonsense and bullshitting yourself, because we all like to do it. Yes, we wrote these words on this page, we've cried, we've killed ourselves, we screamed, we got frustrated, but we're writers, and that's what we do. So as you're approaching this, you really do have to be critical with yourself, but that doesn't mean you have to beat yourself up or throw things out. It just means you have to be very specific and very clear. No script is ever going to be amazing on the first try. Anybody who tells you that is in fantasy land. It doesn't happen. You just got to keep doing it. You got to let it go. You got to sit down. You got to pull out that red ink pen or purple or blue or whatever color you like and really look at what you wrote. And again, that doesn't mean beating yourself up or bashing the work. It just means not bullshitting yourself. But recognize that when you're asking somebody else to read your script, the last thing I want to say about this is like, it's a big task, right? It is a huge ask. A good reader will take 4 to 10 hours out of their life to read this. And why is it so long? Because most good readers will go over your work at least twice, right? Plus, they'll have to think about what are the issues that are there. And then later, they'll have to figure out how best to relay that information to you so that it doesn't hurt your feelings and it's actually productive and helpful for you to like move forward. So do not be flippant about asking people to help you or annoyed if they say no, because you're asking for a lot of their free time. And I think that sometimes gets really frustrating for new writers who are like, they wouldn't read me. And it's like, if they're really busy, they just might not have that 4 to 10 hours, and it might be better to come back to that person later. And you're not going to get a good read if they don't have that time anyways. So there's that. Okay, now let's get into sort of these practical ideas about what does that actually look like, right? From that 25,000 feet sort of thing of it all. One, you have to take it apart to put it back together. And I know every writer is afraid of that Humpty Dumpty effect where you're worried that if I take my script apart, you can't put it back together. But I think a better analogy of thinking about how you take your script apart and rewrite it is more like that Japanese practice of mending broken pottery by filling the gaps with gold and silver. I think it's called kintsugi. Because the point of this all is that you're taking it apart to make it more beautiful, but you really have to know what those pieces are in order to do that. In this process, like I said, there are no band-aids. So please, please do not try to move pieces around or slap a quick fix solution on things, because it never works. You just end up frustrated and you have a hot mess of words on the page, and it's also bad writing and you never get better. Worst of all, if you do that, you'll end up with this, what I like to call a Minotaur baby. This is like mangled, convoluted script that's just sort of pieced together, and just don't do it. And like I said earlier, you have to have clear eyes and a full heart to do this. And what I mean by that is like, get up early to read this. Do this when you're in a good mood. If you're already frustrated, do not read your work, because you're more likely to rip it apart and not be able to have like a really good way of viewing it. So it's better to, like, for me anyways, I do it in the morning. But anyways, this is a marathon, not a sprint. So be bold, be brave, and do the work. Like I said, you got to get dirty. Rewriting is just not pretty. And sometimes I think the scripts feel like it's getting worse before it gets better. That's not just you. That's, I think, how it works. So you just have to keep moving through it. You got to let go of your ego, let go of what you thought that script was going to be, so that you can figure out what the hell you're actually creating. Because oftentimes, like, I'm having this problem with the script I'm writing right now. I realized in my first rewrite that I thought the story was about X, but it's really about Y. And that requires me to drastically rethink everything that I'm working on. And so as I'm working on my rewrite right now, I'm having to change a lot of what I thought was in my first outline. Because, for example, I might have the right character, but I might have the wrong plot point. Or I might have gotten into it and then this thing changed and I didn't make the changes for how that would address my main character. So all of that stuff is things that happened in your first, and that's fine. So you should go back to the basics, go back to those things on those one-pagers you guys wrote at the very beginning about your projects, and look at the fundamentals of story and structure as a way to fix it. And so we're going to talk about those ideas of story and structure. So nothing gets more basic than thinking about how to read a script. Everybody's like, oh, I can read. It's like, yeah, but critical rate of reading your script is slightly different. It's not just reading the words that are on the page. You really have to be able to analyze what's on the page. No matter if this is your vomit draft, aka your first draft, or your seventh draft, I approach my reading process in the same way. The first time I do it, I take it out of final draft, which is what I write in. But say it's in Word or any other syntax, take it out of there, right? Either you can print it out, you can make it a PDF, some other format, because what I find is looking at the material in a different medium often helps me spot mistakes that I don't necessarily see when I'm still staring at it in final draft. Second, like I said, grab a pencil, grab a pen, whatever color, I don't care. Find a quiet place to read. Generally for me, like I said, I like to do it in the morning because I'm wide awake, my head is clear, nobody's calling me, nobody's emailing me. I can just really like focus on it. Third, I read it once through without marking up anything. I just read it for content. And then that way I have a baseline for what it is I'm looking at while my head is clear. Then on my second read through, I add questions in the margins or thoughts that I'm having, or maybe there's a line that comes to me. I'm writing that on the page, which is, for me, I like to write things out. Maybe the scene that I thought was in third, it goes in fourth. So like that's the shit I'm writing in the outline, this like side pages, which is also why it's good to like kind of take it out of its context. I need to know what the goal of that scene. What do the characters want? What do the characters need? Like all of those things are really important when I'm going through it again. And we're going to get into that more nitty-gritty wise right now. So now that you've read your script twice and you've made those initial thoughts, it's time to analyze the plot and the story and look for bumps. And bumps are things that like might stop the audience, might take them out of your world. That's what that word means. And I do this using a very simple methodology that I found in a book by David Ball called Backwards and Forwards. It is in your online resources page. It's a great book. It's very short. I live by it. I read it a couple times a year. The book was written originally for playwrights. It had them in mind, but I think it's still a solid rubric for any script analysis. And since you're going to read it, I hope, I'm not going to go through all of it. I'm just going to run through some of the highlights of what I think is really important. The big thing it talks about very early on is action. And I think it's a word that people get really confused by. And I'm just going to go through it. So a script is a series of action. And action is defined as something happening that makes or permits something else over here to happen. And together, those two equal parts become one action. Part one is called the trigger, and part two is the heat. Thus, the trigger will cause the heat to occur. So what does that mean? So if I have a pen, right? And it falls on the floor, I drop it, right? Me letting go of this, right, is the trigger. It falling on the floor is the heat. And together, that's one action. And since we know that each action in a script builds on each other, that means the first heap becomes the trigger of the next action. I let go of the pen, it falls. I let go, trigger, it falls, heap. It falls on the ground, trigger, you slip on it, that's a heap. That's one action. You slip on it and you fall on the floor, that's the heap. One thing caused the other thing, caused the other thing, caused the other thing. Those are three different forms of actions, and they escalate into a problem. So what we call plot and story are just a series of escalating actions, one on top of the other, until the story ends. So nothing in your script should come out of left field. There should be no weird logic bumps or jumps, nothing counter to the story that you have built. Each plot point that you're making in the script should be built in such a way that the audience believes that it's inevitable, but it should also be a little surprising, because that's what makes your script feel original. So if you run into issues while you're like something's not working, just check your trigger and heaps and how they're built, because oftentimes how you build the action causes a problem later in your script. So let's talk a little bit about the basic of character. Now that we have analyzed plot and script, it's your characters that are going to be the next big thing that you really need to look at in your script that makes it sing. I like to use some of the questions from Leho Egri's book, The Art of Dramatic Writing. I think that's also on your reading list. If it's not, buy it, get it, take it. It's really amazing. First, I asked myself things like, who is my main character? What is my main character's superpowers and their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What are their flaws? Who are the major people in my main character's life? What are their specific issues and problems they're constantly facing? How is the supporting characters in my script complicating that main character's life? Who is my antagonist? Now, this is the thing, I'm going to stop for a second because not everybody knows what an antagonist is, and I also define antagonists in a slightly different way than sometimes other people do. I define antagonist as someone who becomes an obstacle to the main character achieving their goals. Now, this might happen either purposely or by accident, but the obstacle must be constant and escalating. I believe there are two types of antagonists. There is the heart and emotional antagonist, and there's a plot and story antagonist. So for example, my boss at work who doesn't want to promote me is like throwing shade at my job. That becomes like a plot story thing if my character journey is about my job, right? But then if I have a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a child who also wants my attention and my love, right? Like, I want to do this thing at work, but I also have to think about this other person. That other person I love might unintentionally become an emotional or heart antagonist. So think about what types of antagonists have you created in your script. Do you need additional antagonists? Because sometimes you have too much on one person and it gets boring and stale. That's where it's great to have like also the heart antagonist to me. Also think about who your major secondary characters are. How do they support? How do they complicate? How do they elevate your story? Next, now that we have clarified who these characters are, particularly your main character, now we have to look at also their relationships. You should analyze and activate their goals of their journey. I think there are three types of goals that characters can have. They can have concrete goals, they can have existential goals, and they can have character journey long goals. This is something you must do for your main character. Like, it is a must. They should have all three. But I think it's also good to think about how this also works for your supporting characters. So let me explain what I mean by these three types of goals. I think a concrete goal is a finite problem to overcome, like, I broke my leg, I lost my wife, it's an apocalypse, I need to catch a murderer. That's a very simple, concrete goal that you're seeing your character go towards, right? Then I think they're existential goals, right? And that's this bigger question. And I often think they're like ethereal or theoretical, like, I don't know how to trust, or how do I handle grief, or can I find my purpose, or can I find redemption? Which oftentimes is like that sort of emotional driver for a character. Then I think there's the character journey goals. And I define that as these actionable things each character is striving for over the course of the script. And they're usually the tangible ways a character is trying to answer their existential issues. So, you know, if somebody's trying to get redemption, you'll understand it by how they're trying to get redemption. So make sure that all these goals are strong and that they're clear. I'll give you an example. Think about the show Dead to Me as our model. This is a two-hander comedy. And I technically believe they're two main characters, although some people see one as a main character, one as an antagonist, but it depends on how you see it. The first finite goal, the first woman, her husband has died, right? So she has to start over. The other woman, our second lead, left the scene of a hit and run accident, killed the guy, and doesn't want to go to jail. So those are her finite goals. The existential goal for both of these women, they're both in some ways looking for redemption. One character is trying to make up for running over this guy with her car, and the other is trying to make up for a fight she had with her husband that she believes led to his death. And over the course of their journey, they have specific goals and action in each episode that's going to take them from place to place. So we see each of them try different tactics to accomplish this. In the pilot, for example, the wife, the widow, she's grieving. So she decides that she's going to go to grief counseling, right? She's going to join this group. Now, the killer also joins this group, but her goal is not obviously to get over her own grief. It's to befriend the woman whose husband she killed, right? So that makes it clear how, you know, even if two people are doing the same thing, their goals are different and their tactics are going to be different because they want different things. Next, now that we know those things, let's talk about conflict, motivation, and stakes. So what is conflict? I have a lovely rubric I use. I have the character's desire plus the obstacles you throw in their way times the amount of or their inability to compromise. That gives you conflict, right? So if I really, really want something and there's a whole lot of obstacles and fuck it, I'm not going to compromise, that gives your character conflict. And the point of conflict is to clarify and to reveal who this character really is, things about the story, things about the plot, or things about the subtext. I believe there are 4 types of conflict, and I think Aristotle will agree with me. I think there's the conflicts that you can have between me and myself, right? I'm fighting myself to like do the thing. There's also me and an individual person. So it's me versus my individual antagonist. There's also me versus society or institutions or systems if I'm trying to fight the prison complex. I don't know. And then me versus supernatural, fate, God, nature. So any of those ones where they're running into a hurricane, right? Those are the types of conflict. The level of urgency a character has to achieve that goal will also be a thing that helps you raise the stakes on those conflicts. It's a note people get all the time: raise the stakes, raise the stakes. If you make the thing more urgent, that will raise the stakes. So another way to think about it is the effort that character has to do to achieve their goal times how big the obstacle is that you've created and how bad they want it, plus the urgency, that will give you high stakes. If your character gets things easily, then the audience just fucking tunes out. You have to make them fight for it. Urgency, again, equals high stakes. So if your character can get what they want or need next Tuesday, then you're lowering your stakes. Now, if your character kind of sort of wants the thing they want, that gives you low stakes. That doesn't mean, let me stop. That doesn't mean as a writer, you should force your characters into doing implausible things or taking shortcuts to get the stakes to be higher. It means that your character must be willing to suffer and sacrifice or do things they loathe to get what they need, because the situation is urgent. And if they don't, then there's a high price for them to pay. So if you think about it this way, how a character reacts in crisis and conflict is really going to tell the audience a lot about who this person really is at their core. And all of these things have to be clear, and they also have to be dialed up as high as they possibly can. But it should match sort of the tone of your script. So the way I would do this in a drama would be very different than the way I would do this in a comedy, right? So if you put all of these things together, you get a strong character development, AKA the circumstances you've created, plus the obstacle in their way, plus the urgency and the difficulty, and then you add in that character's unique qualities and their personality stuff, that will give you development and growth over the course of your project. So the more you push them out of their comfort zone, the more you force them to dig deep to get their goals, the stronger you make your character, right? But it should also be plausible, right? Like I see it all the time where people are like, I'm just gonna make this character go crazy. Yeah, no, that often is a way to break your character. I like to look at it more like an accordion, right? So it starts small, and then as your project goal, you're pulling it out, like an accordion. That way you're not breaking your character, you're expanding your character. But if you force them to make choices in the moment that are clearly only because you, the writer, want them to do it, not because they need to, or worse, they do something that is totally counter to the person you have built them to be, then that's going to take the audience out of the story. That's going to be a big, huge bump. And then you know you have broken your characters. So how does that work? So if a character is afraid of heights, for example, but if they're forced to walk on a tightrope between two buildings, you got to figure out a way for that to make sense, right? Because if they don't if they don't go across that building, they'll die in Inferno, right? That gives you the reason, right? And that way you've expanded the character because you've given them a plausible reason that they're going to be somebody who's afraid of height is going to go and walk on a tightrope, right? And you force them to do something out of the ordinary. But again, it must feel plausible. And the way they react and carry out that task should also feel like them. So for example, Monk. If he was in a situation, it should feel different than if you were in that situation, right? Lastly, if you don't build it, it doesn't exist, right? I see a lot of times characters are like, this person really wants this, or this person's fighting for it, but it's not really built in the script. We don't actually see them do things. Then the audience isn't going to believe it, right? So like if you say somebody is a brilliant chef, right, who has these 5-star restaurant, yet we don't see them do shit to prove it. We don't see them make amazing dishes, right? We see them making rookie moves all the time. We're not going to believe that they're this 5-star chef. We're just not going to believe it as an audience member. The next thing to think about is plausibility, motivation, and conveyance. And I'm going to define these things because they're words that I don't always hear in film and TV. And these are the final 3 things I think about when I'm looking at my rewrite. Plausibility is essentially basically good storytelling, right? We are literally making shit up for a living and asking the audience to buy into it. So it's important that both our characters, our plot, and anything else we're putting in it, we have to make sure that we're doing any and everything we can so that we're not bumping the audience out of our story. Your story needs to be high and tight. Next, you have to think about the motivation for all of your characters in your script. Don't just do it for your main characters. They have to be genuine. They have to be realistic for the characters you are building. And you can build anything, right? But you must make it believable. And that goes beyond just stating that they want a thing. You need to know why on a deeper level. Even if they're lying to themselves, even if they're like, telling themselves some kind of bullshit. We lie to ourselves all the time, right? Even if the thing they want and believe in goes completely tits up and goes completely wrong. If their motivations are clear, we're going to buy into that story. Last and not least, let's talk about conveyance, which I think is the most important part of being a writer, because you are the conductor on the train of your script. You are guiding a new person, a complete outsider, into your work. You are unfurling the details of it as you go along, and you're trying to make sure that they understand what's happening. You're trying to make sure they're excited to learn more. And conveyance is how you tell the story. When you give information, ways you build the momentum and heighten the stakes, how you clarify the story and the characters. It's also knowing when to give those audience member breadcrumbs and when to withhold information. Withholding is also a tool. It works. Again, read backwards and forwards, chapter 1 through 7. It will help with the structure and the story things that I'm talking about and drive home the art of conveyance. And I'm going to move fast because I'm already at 40. Okay. now that you know what to look for in your analysis, here are the step-by-step ways that I think you can approach your rewrite. And again, this is fluid, right? You can expand or contract this however many you need, depending on what kind of rewrite you need. So step by step, what does that look like? Rewriting, if you think about it again, you can't fix everything at once. So you really need to do this one thing at a time. Think of it like building a house. First, you get that foundation down, you get rid of those issues, then you put up the walls. And once that all passes the test, then you pick up different kinds of problems and do them one at a time. And if you do them systematically and you go through your script fixing issues piece by piece, then your script will get solid as you go, but you're not driving yourself crazy. First thing I like to do is a structure pass, and that's where I'm tackling those things we talked about. Action, I'm looking at character stuff, I'm looking at any big holes, right? Any concerns, and then I start, obviously, I like to start with the big ones, for me anyways, and then I move to the smaller ones. Some people go from small to big, it's up to you. I like to do the big problems first because, well, it's gonna take me time and it'll affect how the smaller ones work. Because if the story and the structure don't stand, nobody gives a shit about what color you paint the walls. Again, to the house metaphor of it all. Next, I'm going to do a character pass. I'm going to see that if anything I change in the plot and the story in my first pass means I have to make changes to my main characters or to my secondary characters, because any change you make is going to have ripple effects throughout the script. Then I'm going to look at the theme of what I'm working on, aka the thing behind the thing. Now that you have your structure and your main characters, that all feels like it's in a good shape, right? If you step back and look at the core of your ideas, you really need to make sure that the audience is taking away from the piece what it is you want them to take away from it. Did you choose the right theme? Is the theme clear? Like, I'm working on a Frankenstein thing, so I need to make sure that all the body mod stuff is clear. I need to make sure that the ethical thing is clear. Like, those are the things behind the thing that's going to make my script pop. After that, my fourth pass is actually, not surprising, I'm going to go back to structure. I know, you just went through this. You're like, why am I doing structure again? Well, if I've done the structure, that changes character. If I've done the characters, that's going to change the theme. If I've gone through those, that might mean I have a new plot hole in my structure. So I have to kind of go back and make sure there's no ripple effects there. And then the last big one I'll do is those secondary characters. Often my first pass is mostly for my main character, making sure they're driving the script. Then I'm going to look at those secondary characters, and oftentimes I'll do them one by one, or I'll do them in tandem for like all the people who love this person pass, and then the antagonist passes, to make sure that all of that shit makes sense. Okay, next, I'm going to sweep for bombs, and these are things that can blow up your battleship and derail all the hard work you just did. And story bombs to me come in different varieties and shades and degrees. Some of them I think are benign missteps, right? But some of them can keep you from advancing as a writer. Others are fatal errors that negatively impact not only your script, but have consequences on your career and the real world. This is, of course, not an exhaustive list, right? But there are some snafus that I think you can avoid. One, formatting, spelling, grammar issues that can really sink you. So you should proofread your script like crazy, or if you're me who can't proofread, I suck at that, I pay someone else. I pay a copy editor to look at my script before I send them to my agents or my managers. Whatever you need to do that so that it looks really professional when you send it out. Because, for example, one of the jobs I got, I worked with a showrunner who, when I was in my first interview, read my script, loved my script, but told me I should fire my agents and my managers because I had 3 misspelled words in my script. And she was serious as a heart attack. So some people are sticklers about that. The next thing is there's a thin line between you and your work. So realize that everything you write is a reflection of you in some ways. And if you're writing about something difficult or sensitive, right? Be it race, gender, class, sexism, whatever it is, bureaucracy, doesn't matter. How you tackle those subject matters really matter. And you have to remember that when you send a script out into the world, 90% of the time, it's going to be somebody who doesn't know you at all. And their only impressions of you as the writer is also coming from the script you're writing. So there's a thin line from people reading your creative project and how they're viewing you as a person. Thus, if you're writing about, I don't know, like a racist character, or if you're writing about something else bad, right? There are ways to approach the material that allows the person who's reading it to understand you're being true to who that character is, without the reader also assuming that you as the writer might be, I don't know, classist or sexist or whatever that may be. I write about this stuff all the time, and I'm telling you, it's a lot of work, but it's not impossible. And I think the trick is really dealing with the issues, not just skimming over the problem, and making sure that the characters feel nuanced and not like every other version you've seen. Don't make them the straw man. Again, I don't think any of this means that you need to be preachy. And I don't think you should let your characters off the hook if they have bad behavior. I think there should be consequences for bad behavior. But it does mean engaging the issue beyond stereotypes. It means being very intentional and being considerate. It means being careful with your words, the images and thoughts, especially if you're using sensitive subject matter. Write with integrity. I think that's important, because at the end of the day, people will judge you as a human being by the work you're putting out in the world. So lastly, I think you shouldn't be toxic. Words matter, images matter. What we do goes around the entire world. So yes, we might not be doctors, and yes, we might not be curing cancer, but if we're intentional about what we create, we can do good things. So pay attention to how your work might cause harm to people in the real world, because it's scientifically proven that TV and film stories can and do have real negative and sometimes positive ramifications out in the world. Also, be very specific and culturally sensitive. Do not propagate toxic stereotypes about underrepresented groups, cultures, gender, religion, politics, all of that stuff. I think that's important. The last thing I'm going to say is about notes, because I think, and I want to stop down here for a second, because I think this is the hardest thing for most writers to take in. We all love our work, right? But we also have to give that work to someone else. And like I said, writing is rewriting, but getting notes is the other thing, right? It's integral to what we do, and literally it's endless, right? Be it your boss, be it an exec, be it your spouse, your family, directors, actors, lighting designers, the audience, online trolls. Everybody has an opinion. It is what it is, right? So you have to get over this fear of getting notes, because it's literally your life as a writer. That is what you do. That is what we do. That is all that happens. So it doesn't mean you have to take all the notes. It doesn't mean that all the notes are going to be good or precise or the right ones, but you're going to get them. You have to get used to it. And that said, it's just fucking hard. If it wasn't, everyone in the world would do it, and everyone in the world would do it well. And I know that. I know that from my own experience. So it's also easy to get really angry and bitter about your situation, be it frustrated with your script, be it the notes that you're getting. But the key to success of writing and also rewriting is not getting bogged down in the muck, right? It's trying to stay positive, trying to stay productive, trying to stay focused. And that's why I believe looking at analysis is so important, because it takes you out of that emotional state we get into when we're rewriting, those things we say to ourselves. And as my mother loved to say, the difference between being bitter and better is one letter. And we as writers get to decide how we want to approach our rewrites and how we want to approach our work. And I think it's important to get better as a writer and not get bitter as a writer. So thanks for listening. I'm sure people have questions, but that is my spiel on rewriting. Happy rewriting, everyone. Yeah.
Brian, did you want to hop in with the question?
Yes, sorry about that. I was just reading one of the new ones that just popped in. Okay, so regarding the 3 types of character goals, do you tend to correlate each type to a different plot milestone? For instance, concrete obstacles for inciting incidents? And then they said, thank you.
That is a good question. I think you have to use them throughout, right? So I think definitely concrete goal for an inciting incident is necessary, right? Like that's the thing that's going to kick your script off. If it's not clear, then that's a little bit harder. I think that one's a nice one. But like, for example, there are other concrete goals they can have along the way, because I think as your character's changing and as you throw more shit at them, that original goal might change, and you have to give them a new concrete thing that they're working towards that is related to that original concrete goal, but is an expansion of it, if that makes sense. So I think that you would have concrete goals throughout. I think you can, my existential goal tends to be tied to, for me anyways, theme, right? So for example, my main character in my Frankenstein play right now is trying, like, her existential goal, like her concrete goal is like, she has several of them throughout, but one of them is to hide what she's done, right? Like she has created a monster, right? So she literally has to hide this, but part of her is also looking for redemption. So that is going to be played throughout, you know, and then the finite goals are going to show how she's getting at that goal throughout the play, right? Does that make sense? So I think they're all interrelated, and you can, as you change their concrete goal, you can expand how you look at it, either existentially or, you know, for their character journey. I hope that makes sense. I know it's a lot of words, and I said that a lot really fast.
I thought the answer was great. With your background in different mediums, do you find yourself adjusting your approach when it comes to developing a story for that specific medium? So like stage versus screen?
Yes and no. Theater is loose. I can do whatever I want, which is why I still do theater. Like I can literally build the script structure around my story, and they can change from story to story, and they're very, you know, like unique to that, which I love. But I feel like film and TV have more concrete structures, and so you kind of have to play within those guidelines. You can still tweak them, but I do believe that, like, you know, they tend to be, for me anyways, feel a little bit more rigid. I'm working on a novel right now, which is like very interconnected to all three, but also very different. So I think oftentimes, like, for example, I feel like my plays are more akin to films, right? They're finite stories that have a beginning, middle, and end. They could keep going, but they're finite, right? Where film and TV feel very different. They're like more like novels. They're chapters of a book, right? You have to leave some threads so that people want to turn the page. You have to leave some threads so that they can see the next chapter. So for me, sometimes there are still links to how I think about different mediums if they correlate to a different kind. Does that make sense? And often when I'm thinking about what the project is, it'll tell me what it is based on how it's flowing out. Like if I have way too many ideas, right? My brain is just going on and on and on and on forever. It's probably a TV show or a novel, right? Because I can just keep ad nauseum thinking of ideas. If it's something that has a more solid beginning, middle, and end, and yes, this character is going to keep going, it's likely a play or a film. So that's how I think about when I'm choosing what medium it goes in. But even that sometimes is fluid, if that helps answer that question.
When you have two trusted people giving you notes and they come at you with two contradictory notes that cannot be reconciled, how do you go about deciding who is correct?
I don't know. Okay, here's my thing with notes. I come into it believing that they are correct for who they are, right? So again, this is why I think it's helpful to know who your note person is, right? Like if my husband gives me notes, he's an engineer. So the way he thinks about things are super technical, right? So his notes are going to be not necessarily something that I can exactly use, but they're going to be very technical. So when I'm listening to his notes, I know to approach how he's talking about things from a really technical place, right? And my best friend comes at things in such an emotional way. She's an actor, right? So she's going to come at it through character motivations and all these different things. And sometimes their notes will appear to conflict. But actually, again, if I'm analyzing it, if I'm stepping back from it and I'm looking again at the story, the structure, or whatever, and looking at the person who's giving me the note, often what I like to do is say, oh, my husband is circling this scene and he thinks there's something structurally wrong with it. And my friend is also looking at this scene, but she's coming from an emotional place. What it's telling me is there is a problem in the scene, right? And oftentimes I got to figure out where is that Venn diagram meet between the structural and the emotional. And oftentimes the answer is actually not in the scene they both picked. It's probably earlier. I didn't set up something right. I didn't set up a character motivation right. I didn't set up the structure right. So the answer to fixing both their moats might be 5 or 6 different things, but oftentimes those are things that have to be fixed earlier in the script. But if 2 people pick the same scene, I know there's a problem, right? Even if they're approaching it differently, even if it feels like their notes are completely counter to each other, oftentimes they're pinpointing a problem, right? And then that's where all that other analysis comes in, because I think this is where note taking is hard. A lot of people are like, oh, they don't think the scene is funny enough. That is subjective. Right? Like, maybe you don't want the scene to be funny. But if it's a comedy and they're not getting an emotional thing in that scene, that might be something that's helpful. You don't necessarily have to do the joke of it all. They just might be like, oh, I want some emotional impact. It's a comedy, so my first thought is it should be funny. But if you watch something like Shrinking sometimes makes you laugh, and then the next time they punch you in the face, right? So the next time they make you laugh, it's even funnier. So again, you have to analyze what the note is before you take it.
Awesome. So I think I got a good final question for you, a fun one.
Awesome.
So I'm a teacher, and one year my 5th graders, I taught them to write through like doing scripts. And every morning their morning work was like getting a marked up piece of a script from me. So I would like give them notes, and they would have to go back and do it and do it and do it. And several months in, Justin comes to me and on his 20th rewrite and goes, "Mr. McDevitt, when am I going to be done?" I'm like, "I got bad news for you, Chief." And so I was teaching them like a more of a writing discipline, that they have to keep going back, they have to keep rewriting and all that. But eventually we got other things to work on. So I guess what I'm asking is, how do you know when a script is done and you're like able to move it to the next phase, or able to hand it in for a deadline or something like that?
That last part is key.
Yes.
Sometimes you are done because there was a deadline, right? You have
Yes.
to put end period. It has to go in. Like, my play has to be in 3 weeks. So at a certain point, I am done for now. It is
Mhm.
done. I will have rewrites. I have other things I can do, but there's a period on it, and it has to be turned in. It's turned in. Also, it depends if this is something for my job, aka I am being paid for this. It is done when they say it is done, which sucks. Or if you're on a show, the great thing about being on a show is it has to be done because people have to do it. Actors have to say it. It has to be edited. So at a certain point, they have to stop giving you notes, and you just have to like let it be done. And then there's editing. So there's that. If it's my own work, I try to do a couple things. If I am at the point where I want to throw the script out of the window or burn it, I put it in a drawer. I stop looking at it. I stop touching it. I leave it the hell alone. Because when you're at that point, you're not thinking clearly. You're emotional, and oftentimes you're going to make it worse, right? So if you're frustrated, and that's at any point in writing, right? If you were working on pages and you get to the negative return, stop, close your computer, put down your pencil, walk the hell away from it, get to it the next morning. But if you're talking about rewriting processes in whole complete script, then I'm saying that's a caveat, right? Like, that's, I think, a harder thing to do. I also tend to have multiple things going so that like I get a breath from the thing I'm working on and can like research something else, right? Because I will always find things. So in February, Tim was telling you, I did a new play festival in Denver on a play that I wrote a decade ago. So coming at it 10 years later, right, with new actors, people who didn't know me, I made a lot of changes because I'm not the same writer I was when I wrote the play. The play doesn't exist in the same way as when I first wrote it. And they had questions that I was like, oh, yo, I didn't even think of that. So you might be finding other changes, but I think it's important when you're thinking about rewriting, again, it needs to be true to you. It needs to be true to the script, and it needs to be things that brings the script to its higher self. I think sometimes people make changes just to make changes, or they make changes to satisfy someone else's wants, desires, and needs. And oftentimes that turns into a Minotaur baby, and you hate it at the end. I don't agree with that. If I'm doing something that I don't think makes it better, I stop. So to me, those are my caveats. I was like, it depends, right? Like, I don't think you need to do it 23 times because generally at 23, I'm about ready to pull my hair out. But I've done that, right? I wrote a feature that I stopped counting how many times I rewrote that damn script, and I was so over it by the end. But the people who wanted to do it just kept asking for changes. So again, if somebody's paying me for it, as long as they keep paying me,
Mhm.
and they're not asking for it for free, I might keep making changes. But I will also tell them at a certain point, you're breaking it. You're breaking it. These changes are not helping. And if you're in that situation, you can't necessarily say those words, especially if you're new. What you have to say is you kind of have to get them to that point of understanding they're breaking it, which is more of like, we could do that, but if we do that, that breaks this, and this. Do you still want me to change that? 9 times out of 10, they're like, oh no, but I like this, and this. We should not break that. Good. So I try to give them the scenario in which they understand. And this is why, again, if you can analyze and know your script in and out, it's easier to say those things, right? You're not coming off defensive. You're not coming off as, it's my words, I just love my words. It's like, no. I built this house. So I know if you move this wall, this is a load bearing wall. That whole ceiling gonna come crashing down. We can move this side wall, this pony wall, that don't matter. Like, and then that changes this, right? If you keep thinking about it that way, when you're getting notes, if it's for business and for work and you can't tell them no, find a way to do that. And also, here's my last thing. It's not a question people ask, but I think it's a question people should think about. I do believe there are bad notes. I do believe that's a thing. I know there's some people who are like, there's no such thing as bad notes. There are some. I've gotten some like, what? But even on the really shitty, horrible bad notes that I've gotten, what I will do is think about what it means. Because often if you think about the thing behind the thing, there is something good behind it, even if it's terrible. And I've gotten a lot of them, and you're like, what are you talking about? Or you're never going to do it. Often it's like, okay, I'll do the mind exercise of, well, what if I took this really terrible note? What would that do? Right? Like, what would it mean? Because at least it's a thought experiment, and I might come at the end being like, nah, I still ain't doing it. Like, that doesn't work. But I did it. I thought about it. So when they ask me about it, I could at least be like, here's what I took from your note. I think you meant this. So I tried to address it this way, this way, this way. But as ultimately, I don't think it works for this reason. And I better be right, because if I'm doing it for work, I can get fired.
Mhm.
But if at least they see my process and see my work, oftentimes they're like, oh, I see how you did that. I see how you did the math. My math was over here, and they can better describe what they actually meant. So hopefully that is helpful.
I think this has been immensely helpful tonight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you so
Lovely.
much, Bianca. So great to see you back here. And before we open up the breakout rooms, just another big round of applause. Super insightful as always, and honestly, I could listen to you talk for hours, but fortunately, we do have to go to the next portion of the meeting.
Sounds good.
But thank you so much again.
But remind them that, just quickly, the backwards and forwards is in your folder. But I think I also had the anatomy of good pilots. And there was another document I did for previous years. That should be in the folder too. I didn't talk about those tonight, but that might be helpful. If not, I can send them to you again, but I think you have them.
Yes,
But
I just
listen
dropped the link
to
again.
people. Perfect. So yeah, be good, have fun, enjoy writing. Good luck.
Thanks, Bianca. Wonderful. We're gonna go ahead and open up the breakout rooms in just a moment here. Hope you all enjoyed the panel tonight, and I hope you have a great rest of your breakout. All right, rooms will be opening shortly. I think I have a couple folks who still need to join. Let me.
What, like in the waiting room? I didn't see anybody.
No, just sorry. That I
That's
needed
okay.
to sort them into their room.
Gotcha.
Oh, I guess that's so weird. Just disappeared. Never mind.
Awesome.
Bianca, that was awesome. Thank you so much.
This is fun, as always. Hopefully it was useful. I tried to not be as fast as I normally.
No, it was perfect.
I
Could I be added back in my, I think I get kicked out.
Oh, it doesn't let me re-add you, but if you go into the toolbar, there should be an option that says like join breakout room. It might be under more if you can't see it right away.
Here it is. Thank you.
Yeah. Have a good
Yeah.
night.
I can assure you that some of these are a little dry and tough to follow for that reason. Yours did not have that problem. So
I totally
it was
agree.
yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, it's hard. Rewriting is hard, and everyone hates
Yeah.
it. I don't hate it anymore, but I know it's one of those things that people are like, "But how? How do I do this?" So hopefully it's helpful, and hopefully they won't hate it anymore. So, if you need me for another one, let me know. Kira, I always enjoy doing this.
Yes, thank you so much. No, it's such a pleasure to have you, and I'm
Yeah.
sure I will be reaching out again soon enough.
Very cool. And if I do this next year, I'll be doing it from Paris.
Oh, that's so
I just
cool.
got
Ooh.
into a PhD program in Paris.
Oh my
so
God, congrats.
I
Which
will,
Congrats.
university? Where's it at?
it is it's weird. It's a British school in Paris. So the University of London in Paris
That's so cool.
has a artistic PhD program. So we'll be working on another new play in Paris. So I
Oh
was
my
like,
God,
I
that
need
would be, like,
croissants
so
and drink
magical.
wine while writing plays. Yes, please.
It's the absolute
Um,
dream.
So yeah, so I will love to do this again, but I will just be doing it from Paris if I do it next year. So
That's so cool. Wow, congrats. That's exciting.
Wow.
thank you. If they have any more questions, they can email me, or you guys can compile them and email me, and then I'll email all at once. Actually, that's probably easier because usually when one person has a question, multiple people have the same question.
Yeah,
So
totally.
if anybody emails questions, yeah, I'll just try to send one big email and answer them as they go.
Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, sounds great.
Have a good
Thank you.
night.
See ya.
Take the
Thanks.